Okay. I'm going to all right, let's try this again. I'm going to show you guys how to make a curly torch railroad spike tomahawk. This is a tribute video, so there's not going to be any promotion in this. I'm going to start on this process so I get a little more comfortable telling the story, okay? So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this end off. This particular design keeps a railroad spike head as like a hammer bolt. Makes it more look like a railroad spike. And then this part is, excuse me, this part is forged out into the blade. Now to do it a little easier, because there's upsetting done here, I'm going to take and I'm going to trim off. I'm going to cut that tip off. The reason I'm doing that is it's going to be less chance of having a cold shut or something. Talk about this process first, and I've already got my forge going. I'm gonna heat and upset this portion right here. Now this is best done in a cold forge where you can isolate the heat, and I don't have that right. Well, I have that, but I don't have that available in my shop right now. So we're going to put that in my Atlas forge. And like I said, this is a tribute video. A friend of mine who was, I've known him for quite a few years, found out last night he had passed away. And he actually was kind of inspiration. Got me into doing the railroad spike tomahawks. We did them different. Whereas he would upset this end, forge it out into a blade, and I'd make mine into a spike tomahawk, where I would take the head end and forge that into a blade and draw this out into a spike. So it's two different processes, and I couldn't think of a good way to really honor that memory. So I decided that maybe doing one of his railroad spike tomahawk in kind of the style that he did might be a good way to do that, because it was a design that it wasn't specific just to George, but it's one of the things I remember him for amongst a lot of his work, and hey, now forging and doing all that fun stuff. So once that gets up to temperature, I'm going to start upsetting that tomahawk, or that end, drawing that out. And that's actually a technique I used when I was on Master of Arms on alive and keep his work alive. So if it's something that you want to try out, this is a technique that you guys can try. I'm going to wear these most of the time. I have to take them off for a little bit to look in the boards, but it's probably better for me to keep these on for the darker glasses today. So I'm just going to talk a little bit. Like I knew George through Brown-Rhodes, through Frontier Reenactment, and he actually kind of got me into cable Damascus. I'd read about it in Got Junior's $50 knife shop, and also $50 knife shop did not include the 20-some bucks for the book at the time. But I heard about cable Damascus because I was working for a primitive setup at the time, and George kind of got me into cable Damascus. He made me some. We did some trading, and we also we got to do demonstrations together at different times. And he was a good guy. And I knew him for quite a few years. And he actually passed away this past Saturday. I found out about it last night. This past Saturday was his birthday. It was also my daughter's birthday and my daughter's wedding. And they also married all the Osborne on 26. So a lot of things went on this past Saturday, I guess. So what I'm doing here is not the same equipment. Like I said, George generally used cold forge where he could isolate heat. So I'm going to be doing some select cooling so that I don't get as much deformation while I'm doing. And I'm hoping to turn out something to kind of be remembrance. And I don't know what I'm going to do with the piece we've done, but so I'm going to go ahead and get my water bucket ready here. It appears that we do have a troll on here already. It's kind of early in the day for that, but I hope you get some mental help. So first step in the process, I'm going to come in here. And I start flattening that out. I'm pushing the material back into the stock. But like I said, if you can isolate heat with a cold forge, or maybe you're using a torch or something, this does work a lot better. So you want to work this at a fairly high heat. What's going to happen is it's just going to start essentially mushrooming that piece together. I've also seen this where a person takes and pulls the end of that spike over and forward weld it. And I may try that at some point, but that's not how George did it. So I want to try So what we're going to do, we're going to keep going. And I'm just kind of working across this almost like a rivet, you know, and that's spreading out pretty good. And I want to work this back quite a ways. You can see how that's starting to mushroom out. Now, what I'll do shortly is I'm actually going to go in and square that up because I don't want it too wide, and I want to work that material back, not as much as I can, but within reason. Upsetting's the opposite of drawing out. Drawing out is where you take a piece of steel or iron, whatever, and you start bringing it out. So, what I'm going to do is let that get up to a reasonably high heat, and then I'm going to switch to non-dominant and go with a slightly heavier hammer, because one, to keep you balanced out a little bit, and two, it's also going to keep me from getting too wore out, you know, just working one side at a time. So you can see how that's thickened up at the end, and there's other techniques you can use for this. You can isolate that heat, and I'll demonstrate that next, where you actually hold that with the hot end against the anvil and hammer it down. And sometimes that works better than others. Now, in that case, I am going to go for a heavier hammer, and I'm going to use my 3.5 pound half rounder. So I'll probably be using straight peen, cross peen, half rounder. I'll probably be using a couple different hammers to really shape this up the way I'd like to. Now, working a longer piece of steel like this and trying to keep it, from bending to one side or the other, front to back, whatever. What you really need to do is you just got to stay on top of it and try to correct it as you go about what you're doing. So I'm going to try demonstrating that other process, and that's where you come in like this. You can see how much that bends. It keeps it fairly even though. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to try that a couple more times. You can also take this and place it into the vise and hammer on it. I got a feeling if I do that, I'm mostly probably just going to have it get pushed down through the vise, and it'll be a little harder to open that vise afterwards. But I had a mosquito bite me last night at the fair. But I'm getting that up to temperature again, and see how much that's starting to thicken up, and that evened it out pretty good. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to the other technique where I'm hammering down into it. I'll go with this little double face right here, see what I can do. And I'll talk a little more about George. George was a good guy. He was a cancer survivor. He was also a veteran. And he did blacksmithing. He did living history. And like I said, I think this is a way that, you know, maybe somebody, maybe some of the people who are going to watch this video are watching now. Maybe they'll see this and say, hey, I want to try that. Well, that'd be cool. Kind of keep his memory alive. That up some more because it's not moving very well at all. All right, guys. So I remember George actually had he had a coal forge he wanted to trade one time, but I think his brother gave it to him or something. Well, a year or so went by. He decided that, well, he probably ought to keep it. A year or so went by, and then he got a hold of me. He said, hey, you got that ratchet forge? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I'll trade you. Yeah. So I finally got to a hand crank blower back when I did coal forging mostly. I remember one time I got a whole bunch of old blacksmith equipment from an old blacksmith shop that kind of fell in. And they were cleaning up the property, and I told George, I said, hey, if you want to come get this stuff, I think there was a drill press and, there's some rail anvils and a big table forge and some stuff like that. And I was like, I'd rather go get used than to go to waste. So he came and got it and did some refurbishing and so forth. He also had a tomahawk grip before I did. He, like I said, he did a lot of the railroad spike tomahawks. He also he also re-dripped the tomahawks. People at camp had a bad habit of trying to use a tomahawk like a wood axe and use it to drive stakes and you know, drive splitting wedges, and you take your teardrop eye and that just smash it down. So he did a lot of camp repair like that, and he told me where to get one. That was actually one of my first online purchases, was buying a railroad spike tomahawk, or a tomahawk drift, And you know, that's been decades back, and I just finally got rid of that drip to a friend of mine who was needing one a couple months back. So George was an inspiration. He was a good guy, and he was recognized and respected in the community. So you can see how this is starting to it's starting to spread out here at the bottom, and it is wider. I'm going to do a couple more heats. And one thing I'm going to do while I'm working on this piece, and you may not be able to, so I'll try to turn the camera so you can see. It's not that big of a deal. I got a bucket over here of water, and the part with the railroad spike head, an area that's going to be the eye, I'm going to take that, I'm going to cool it off in the water so that it doesn't deform near as much. I think my eyes are as red or teary as they were earlier. I want you to switch out glasses. Well, thank you, Bastian. Tristan Miller. I like the name. Very cool. I forgot to turn the camera for you. Sorry, guys. Now, the difficult part of this that you got to keep going back and forth and straightening this out. But a couple more heats, and I'm going to start punching the eye on this. And so I think I'm gonna go ahead and I believe that's the one I use right there. Get my tools in order. Tell you what, guys, it is a hot one in here today. And after this, I'm going to go through and make a whole bunch of spike knives, because that's even if there's something that happens, you know, you have a friend pass or something like that, you still have to keep going, and that's what I'm doing here. Gladius are interesting. I've messed around making. I've never really made a good one, but Gladius and Spallinger were actually two of my favorite swords when I was in high school, just because of the simplicity. And what's interesting is that the use of natural handle material for the handle isn't uncommon, but the pommel and a portion of the guard generally are wood or bone, and then with the plate on top for the guard, so it's not necessarily rudimentary, but quite simplistic. Guys, I think that is probably enough for me to go ahead and start start making my tomahawk from here. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to heat that up and I'm going to even everything out the way I need it to be. And then I'm going to start punching the eye. Okay, I've got a mess over here is what I got, but I can make this work. So the straighter section here, that's what I'm going to punch through for the eye. And the way I'm going to do that, this is a squared punch. Essentially, it's a chisel with the end ground flat. And I've got to try to keep this as centered as possible. I used to use a regular chisel to do this. The problem with that, the biggest problem with that is you end up with more of a taper. So I'm going to sharpen this real quick on my grinder. And I'm going to use it to mark the top. So this is a little bit wider. There will be overlap when I go to use that punch, but I think I'm up to temperature where I can start this. And I'm going to start this bottom up. At least I think I am. I'll drift bottom up. I'll start this top down. Should work okay. So I've got it marked with my chisel. Pull that off real quick. And it's off to the side a little bit, but it gives me a point of reference. I'm gonna get that. Sorry, I didn't turn that back. I marked that with my chisel, cooled it off. Now I'm going to use that as a point of reference. To go ahead and start punching through. Now, for the part where I punch through, I am going to find a bigger hammer. There's a 4-pound, we'll use it. I won't use it initially because I've got to get an even mark on that. Making that first punch on that is very important because that determines how the rest of it's going to, the rest of that's going to go from there. All right. Now this is just a regular railroad spike. It'll be water quench. If I wanted it to be a harder blade, I'd super quench it. This isn't how I normally make them. Right now I'm sitting at half an hour in and it's taking a while. Now I'm also doing it by hand. I'm not using my power hammer like it. So with that, I'm going to get that heated up and go from there. That should be fine. I'm going to have that at a lot higher heat to really make it move that way. In some cases, I do use try this one. It's just a little more even through here. Some cases I will cut through with the chisel, but I found that it doesn't make as even of an eye, and I like to keep it as easy as possible. So that's coming up to temp. I can start working on it from here, but it's going to be a little rough. So, like I said, punching that eye is a critical part of this process. And if you don't get it right, you fight it the whole way, or you throw it away. Blacksmithing's not about doing it right the first time. It's about being able to fix it if you don't do it right. This does look like it's going to be off to the side just a little bit, but I'll make it work. Turn that heat up just a little bit more because I'm clearly not warm enough here in the shop. Today we're not actually open, but the door's unlocked and the sign's on, the light's on, so it might as well be. Alright, like I said, if this was a cold forge, it'd be an isolated heat, and chances are you could probably get it hotter. I mean, you can get it to the burning point a lot easier with coal. That's also the reason I use gas, is so it's a little more controlled. I don't know if George ever had a gas forge or not, but I'd imagine he probably did at some point. So you can see how that slot's starting to form there. Alright, now that I've got that started, I'm going to go to the 4-pounder. I'm also going to grab my water because it's hot in here. that as I'm working this, you can see where it's starting to expand there. So, all part of the process is materials displaced. That's going to open up. And being that I'm going to be driving a tomahawk grip down through there, it should work out pretty good. So I'll get it slit, then I'm going to start forging that blade out. As I've said before, this video is not going to have any open promotion on it. This is a tribute video to a friend of mine who passed away, and a technique that he used to make his spike tomahawks, his railroad spike tomahawks. Now, like a spike tomahawk, not a spike like this, but a different style of railroad tomahawk. So, hopefully some of you guys will see this and be like, hey, I want to try that, and help keep his memory alive. So here we go. I used to have the newspaper where Colonel George and I were both doing demonstration Cattle Pioneer Days one year. There's been a couple divorces ago, so God knows where it got to. Mark, thank you. Rebecca, how's it going? Warm. Now you guys might have seen some of my other videos where I was making spike knives, and I'd do it in a couple heats using the power hammer. Well, this is a lot more involved. I'm getting a good bounce out of that at this point, and that tells me that I'm pretty much ready to start punching through on the other side. Now, this is, I've actually got a mark that runs down the middle of it for thinning that metal out. And I think that's what I'm going to keep doing. This cool just a little bit, because what I want it to do, I actually want to shear that slug out in the middle, which is what's happening right now. There it is. So now it's back into the forge for that to heat. And instead of cutting a sliver out, I've knocked out a rectangular slug, just a piece of metal that got displaced using that square punch, and that's the reason I use that punch instead of just cutting with the chisel. Well, Rebecca, it's a lot of practice, and I make the joke when people come in for to do classes about this is very similar to Play-Doh. Excuse me for just a moment. I gotta get this brushed out a little bit, combed out. And Play-Doh and clay move in a very similar manner. This is just hotter and a lot denser. And I also make the joke that much like Play-Doh, it's edible, as you can eat anything once. Not that I would recommend this, but what I'm going to do next, I'm going to get a cross peen hammer, and I'm going to start fulling out that blade and make it fan out. I'm going to try this hammer right here. It's older than me and George put together. George ain't around anymore, but that's the reason I'm doing the video. How that boring spreads that out. So I'll hammer a little bit non-dominant, I'll hammer a little bit dominant. It helps to keeps me balanced out. It's a technique I recommend that if you are a blacksmith or thinking about trying to do this, try this technique, because what it does is it lets you work longer with less fatigue, and that way you don't end up with one huge arm and one smaller arm, because it does happen. You can see it's starting to what we call fish lip on the end, but that'll get grounded off or cut off. I want to go ahead and go to my dominant side and start working through that. Absolutely. When it comes to blacksmithing, it's much like guns, guitars, motorcycles, swords, and knives. How many do you need? Always one more. Hammers and tongs. I'm going to swap out cross peen. I've got a whole rack of hammers. This is a Trenton tie hammer. It's a Purgatory Ironworks. This one I don't think is marked, but it's going to get some use here in just a minute. There we go. You can see how much that's spread out already. I said I was going to do majority of this hand forging. Gov Nikolai, I'm making a railroad spike tomahawk. It's a memorial video for a friend of mine who passed. He used to make these. Let me see what I can do. First thing we're going to do, because it's hot in here, we're going to go to the power hammer. George had a tire hammer he made. He was a welder, and I believe a boiler maker at one point. This is a tire hammer as well. Saved me quite a bit of time there, actually. Well, thank you, Rebecca. This is actually, it's a tire hammer. Let me get this back in the forge. I'll show you guys some stuff. So, this one was made by Raymond Head in Alabama, or Arkansas, I believe. I think it was I got it from Robbie Bowman. So there's a motor over here with a pulley on it, and there's also a brake. Now the brake is currently engaged. When I press on the lever down here, it disengages the brake and engages the motor. So I turn that on. As that builds momentum, that compresses that spring. And if it moves fast enough, then it creates enough momentum to come down and make that strike. All right. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start working the top down on that. All right. Next step of the process is going to be to start drifting this. Now, drifting is a wonderful combination of progress and frustration. George said never leave those in an anvil, that's a knuckle buster. So I just figured I'd move that for now. Which, this isn't an anvil, it's a swage block, but it also holds hardy tools. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and start forming that eye. I need to open that up a little bit first. So, I have to find something I can do that with. Seems to be working. So on the next heat, I'll start bringing that through, and then I'm going to start taking those thick eyes and drawing them down to make the eye a little bit longer. See if I can move this so we can get both processes in shot. Process back and forth. I need to thin that eye out, draw it down, but I also need to get it to open up some. If it's too cool or stretched too much, it's going to rip. It's going to tear, or others might say a crack or form, but it's usually tearing. Heat up some more. I'm going to get that at the tip a bit more before I start forging on it. I come up the temperature again, there's a lot of back and forth on this. Now, if you're just making a tomahawk or two or a couple a day, this will work for you, the process. If you're going to make as many as what I generally do, I recommend get a power hammer, get a press, or you're going to have to get some friends and maybe a quantity of beer or barbecue to get them to swing hammers for you. That in from the top, and then it'll be checking for alignment. I'll let it cool, be grinding, and then this one will be a water quench. It's a regular spike, so a water quench will work. I need to figure out how I'm going to do this. I want to try it here. I don't know that that's going to work. Vise. Let's use a vise. My issue with using the switch block for this portion of the build is that it's actually that bottom die. It sticks out too far because it's got that hammerhead on the back. Check this for square a little bit. Make a few adjustments. set that to the side to cool. We'll come over here to the 2x72. No joke today. I'm going to go ahead and change from a flattened to a contact wheel. guys, what I've got right now is myself going in circles. What I'm going to attempt, I'm going to try to quench the head of this. And then I'm going to heat the edge to quench it. This is water quench. It's about a 1040 steel. It's going to harden up some, but it's not a cutlery grade. We do a lot of railroad spike projects, but what I want to do here is like I said, it's a memorial piece. It's a commemorative. It's in remembrance of, I guess. So I'm just going to ramble on for a bit while I do this. Generally, I'm doing this like I would with an oil quench on a similar piece. And I think what I'm going to do quench that hammerhead first and pull it off. Let everything cool. I'm going to heat that edge. That way, if it does temper back any, it's going to temper back the hammerhead and not the edge. Generally, you want the hammer to be a little bit softer. Or if it's a spike, you don't want it to break off or crack or anything. All right. Right along here, I'm waiting for my temperature to come up a little more, and I'm going to quench. So whether you're doing whatever kind of quench you do, you want that eye to stay relatively soft. Now that's hardened up some. You see how the temperature ran on that edge? That's kind of cool looking. And now I'm going to get that edge heated up and quench it. Go ahead and change this out to 120 so I can sharpen it. So there it is. Let's go ahead and put an edge on this. So I'm just using the 120 here. It doesn't need to be razor sharp really for an axe. It shouldn't be. Going to straighten out that burr just a little bit. And then, see if I can find a handle that'll fit this. Makes for a neat little tomahawk, really. Now, I order my handles in bulk, and some of them come in better than others. And so I got a box of handles over here. Actually, don't look too bad. Drive that down, fit it up just a little bit. I think that'll be just fine. Check for straightness in this handle. It's reasonable straightness in this handle. All right. So I'm gonna grab farrier's rasp and I'm gonna work this down real quick. Now, generally when I do this, I say don't use a metal hammer because you can split the wood on the handle. And the one downfall of this particular design is that short eye right there. So I'm going to show you guys what I do real quick. Because I'm finishing this up, hey, this one's for George. George ain't with us anymore, but he did leave a legacy. So he lives on in memory. You may notice my Wilton gravy boat right there. That has diluted linseed oil in it. So it's mineral spirits and linseed oil. That's a combination that Cheyenne uses for finishing out her handle material. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give this a coat because it makes the handle look better and kind of makes that wood a little bit tougher once it soaks in. Now there is a key to get it to soak in a bit more. And that is the application of heat. And I generally apply the oil before I apply the heat, because the heat can cause that handle to crack. And I don't want it to do that. And there's times I'll just run this in the forge, and that works too, but I just turn that forge off because it is just so hot in here, guys. And I'm just going down the handle and adding some burn marks, essentially. No particular spacing or pattern, just making it a little more interesting. Sometimes little things like this can keep life interesting. You know, it's just something that adds to it. It's the little things like that. Gonna be a little warm. Right there is tomahawk. Now, I'm getting ready to and beeswax. I've used some beeswax on the handles, Tommy. I have. All right, hold on. I'm in here. It's kind of dark. Let me turn the light on. Well, there is my Curly George style railroad spike tomahawk I made right there. You guys saw it. This one's for Curly George, and it's a bullseye. You guys have a good one, and to all friends and family of George Spallinger, condolences, and rest in peace, man. Later.